And we're going to go live. Give me 1 minute, ladies, to make sure I have all my ducks in a row. I'm pretty sure I can pull this off. I've done it a few times. So, hey, everybody, it's high noon. This is June 30th. Welcome to everyone for joining Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. There is a slight adjustment to the participants. I'll let you know a little bit more about that as well. We are, in fact, live on Facebook. We are, in fact, live on LinkedIn. But more importantly, we're live with you right now on June 30th at 12:01. I'm Teddy Burriss. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting. Okay, truth be known, I work for my wife. And our business is all about helping people master the use of LinkedIn as a business tool. We do corporate training, we do webinars, we do one-on-one coaching, we're a mastermind group, all wrapped around helping people learn how to use LinkedIn as a business tool. My special co-host of the day, and I'll explain to you why I have a co-host of the day, is Ms. Leslie Speas. Leslie, would you do me a huge favor and introduce yourself to our guest?
Absolutely. I feel very honored to be here today. Feel like kind of like the guest host on Regis and Kathy Lee. That shows my age, but I don't think I'm quite like you, Teddy, because you got all the old school props in the background.
I do know that typewriter works.
All right. So I work for a company called The Resource. The Resource is a human capital management company. Primarily, we do staffing and recruiting, but I lead a HR consulting division. So if anybody needs any HR consulting, leadership development, anything like that, hit me up. I know Randy pretty well over the years, just from being in Winston-Salem, Sherm, and in the community. So thank you guys for having me today.
Well, thank you for covering for us. And before I introduce our special guest today, Katherine Perry, let me explain to you what I did to Randy. Randy went off to have a fairly minor, I think is the right word, he would say, medical procedure taken care of. And because of that medical procedure, he became less presentable than he normally is. Remember, his words, not mine, he has a radio face. And Randy said, you know, I just don't want to show my exaggerated radio face today. And so he asked me to find a substitute co-host. Randy's fine. He actually may be, let me go take a look. He may be stalking us and he may be an attendee listening to what we do. And he's guarantee you, he's got his notepad and his pencil out. And he's taking notes of what I'm doing wrong so he can school me after today's session. So anyway, Randy's good. He just didn't want to be on the show today. And I wish him all the best as he continues to recover from that surgery. Leslie is filling in, and Leslie's quite capable of doing this. So our special guest today is Katherine Perry. Katherine Perry is not only a native of Winston-Salem, but she's also the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem, which is a really cool program out of in Winston-Salem. She's been involved in Leadership Winston-Salem since what, 2017?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you could, Katherine, introduce yourself more to our audience so they know who you are, please.
Sure. So again, my name is Katherine. I'm the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem. I started work here, as Teddy mentioned, in 2017 as the program director. Leadership Winston-Salem's mission is to energize, connect, and engage leaders to serve and improve the community. So I've been working to do that for the past 4 years, hopefully for the next several to come. I can tell you in my entire professional career, this has been absolutely my favorite job. Working here is something I enjoy getting up in the morning and going to every single day, especially now that we're actually back in the building. I work with a small but mighty team of staff members who are all equally as committed to our community and to educating leaders. And I work with, well, we have over 2,000 alumni, and I'd have to say that I work with about 150 active volunteers each and every year that pour heart and soul into what we do here. me personally, I've been in nonprofit my entire professional career. I went to Carolina and got a degree in journalism, which I promptly did nothing with. So after I decided that journalism wasn't my bag, but I had this great expensive piece of paper that said that technically it was, I went into work with the American Red Cross in Winston-Salem, and then went from nonprofit to nonprofit. All over the state. So I've lived in Winston, Kernersville, Greensboro, Wilmington, Raleigh, Cary, Charlotte, back to Winston, up to Bristol, Tennessee, then back to Winston. So I figured since I got pulled back to Winston 3 times, that I probably ought to do something Winston-centric. So
cool.
That's sort of the long and short of me.
Good. And a Pofftown native.
Yeah, so technically a Pofftown native, but if anybody's familiar with Pofftown, when I grew up, it was really more of just a giant neighborhood. And so you couldn't say I'm from Pofftown because nobody knew where that was. So you just basically adopt the I'm from Winston mantra. Yeah. My house is in Pofftown, but I am from Winston.
And I live in Advance, so I also tell people I'm from Winston. So,
and I live in Pofftown as well, and get tired of spelling it for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm with you. So, hey, tell us where you are, folks. Drop in the chat. We need to know where you are. We're giving away prizes today for the person who is the furthest away. So, yeah. And by the way, Denise was also with the Red Cross, Katherine.
I saw that and was getting ready to type in an answer, but I'll just go ahead and answer out loud. I was with the Red Cross when I graduated from college in '92. And I stayed there for 3 years before I relocated to Wilmington. And I believe I have that correct. So from '92 to '95.
Yeah.
So in other words, like a whole lifetime ago.
Yeah, cool. And look, Harrisonburg, Virginia. I know where JMU is. And from Colorado. So good stuff. We got people. Come on. We got how many people we have here? 25,000 people in this call. There's lots more people from all over the place. So Leslie will be monitoring your chat. And please use the chat. Don't use the Q&A. We're lazy. And if you have any question or any thought, feel free to share it. And Leslie will bring it up as Katherine and I get into a conversation about community engagement. And why is this not only important, but critical for you as an individual as you develop yourself as a professional and more specifically in career transition. So cool beans. So Katherine, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I understand the value of community engagement. I too have been involved with lots of nonprofits in the area, and it's fun. Not only is it beneficial for lots of ways, but it's also very rewarding and fun. So, one of the value propositions I got out of being a part of my community or communities was the people I meet, the ability to expand my network. Tell me a little bit more about how you see that value proposition working in the context of either Leadership Winston-Salem or other community engagement.
So, I personally feel like, and this is a part of what I live, sleep, eat, and breathe every day as the executive director and previous program director for Leadership Winston-Salem, is that the best way to get to know your community, the best way to feel like you're making a difference in the community that you live in, the best way to get to know others is by engaging, not just being a casual bystander to what's happening in your community, but actually, pulling up your bootstraps and rolling up your sleeves and being willing to get in and do the dirty work. And for a lot of perspectives, really, for a lot of reasons, because if you're living in this community and you see change that you want to see happen, you can't just sit back and wait for somebody else to affect that change. You have to be willing to jump in and do it and be part of the movement that's going to create positive change in your community. Because if not you, who? If not now, when? Community engagement from the standpoint of professionals either in transition or professionals that maybe want to look towards a career change. At any point in time, being engaged in the community is going to expand your network considerably and show other people that you come in contact with what your breadth of skills and resources are. I cannot truthfully tell you that there would be one single disadvantage in engaging in your community insofar as feeling self-worth, feeling worth in your community, feeling like you make a difference. The connectivity that comes along with engaging in your community is second to none. And of course, a little plug for Leadership Winston-Salem. That's kind of what we're all about with a network of 2,000 plus people. It's super important that our people connect with each other. We have a class of 64 every single year. And when they graduate the program at the end of their 9 months, they know people in the city, in the education system, in the financial district, in the healthcare, employment sector. So, and that's just a microcosm. That's the same kind of connectivity that you can get if you get involved with any local nonprofit. So if you get involved with Habitat for Humanity and you start building houses, or you get involved with Pivot Ministries to help local underserved women, you're going to meet a microcosm of the diversity that is Winston-Salem.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I have done work with Leadership Winston-Salem and Habitat for Humanity, and I'm not supposed to use the word March of Dimes, JDRF, Winston Chamber, which is now called, I think it's called Greater Winston-Salem, and we have Michelle from Greater Winston-Salem hanging out with us today as well. So I can testify to the value of community engagement. When I moved down here in 1997, I started, getting into the community engagement part of it, and it propelled my career factorially, as well as I was able to help others, which is also important. So good. So Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a question that came in. How did Leadership Winston-Salem get started?
Yeah.
Great question.
So it is a good question. Leadership Winston-Salem started and initially in a study in 1984. There were 3 community stalwarts that got together. Julius Corpening, who's with the chamber, Ed Pleasance, who was a significant business owner in the community and also engaged with the chamber, and our chancellor of Julius was the development director of Wake Forest University, not with the chamber. Ed was with the chamber. And then our president of Wake Forest all got together and wanted to figure out whether or not a community leadership program would be something that would work for our community. They had seen other examples in other communities where it had been beneficial for the community to grow and change, to recognize issues, and to put basically task force of intelligent, engaged people around certain issues in the community. So they did a study to see whether that was something our community would support. Their initial focus was intentional diversity, equity, and inclusion, which back in the 1980s and early 80s was not something that a lot of organizations did. So this started sort of as a birth notion from the chamber, but definitely existed outside the confines of the chamber. And we've been running our show ever since.
Yeah. And a lot of cities have their own flavor of leadership. And
Yes.
And I've researched a few of them. I'm Winston-Salem, but I've paid attention to what High Point and Greensboro and Kernersville and others are doing. And no matter what community you're in, I would really encourage you to look at your leadership community and see what's going on there, because they all have a lot of value. So
So if I may add one last thing, the name that I was blanking on because I only had 1 cup of coffee this morning instead of 2 was Thomas Hearn. So, and I should know better because Thomas Hearn, as the president of Wake Forest, really did a lot of heavy lifting for us, so much so that our opening retreat is called the Thomas Hearn Opening Retreat. So don't tell anybody at Wake Forest that I blanked on that name.
There are only 27,000 people on the call. I guarantee every one of them heard you disclaim that you don't want to have that repeated. So.
And they're all sworn to secrecy. I'm completely certain of it.
Part of the license agreement to show up as a guest or an attendee. So look, let's look at it another way. Getting involved in your community, how can that involvement showcase and or let you practice your skills? What do you think?
So in my opinion, when you get involved with your community, you are going to work, as I mentioned before, with a really broad palette of other people. So you have the opportunity to work with diverse communities. And by diverse, I mean diverse in every aspect. People of different genders, people of different backgrounds, people of different races, people of different professional and educational backgrounds. So you learn how to expand your skill set of dealing with teams of people. And that is something that, in my opinion, many employers, be them nonprofit or for-profit, are looking for in a new employee. Is they want to see somebody who's got a diverse background or has ability to deal with diverse sets of people. So in my opinion, working in community engagement gives you an opportunity to fine-tune skills, and truthfully, it's a rare occasion when you work with groups of people where you don't have to deal with conflict management, say, for example, or differences of opinion, particularly when you're talking about people that are leaders. Because in many instances, when you are a leader in your company or a leader in your organization, you tend to focus on you're in charge and you're delegating or you're instructing or you're the go-to guy, so you know how to get the job done. But when you're working with other community leaders or company leaders, you've got to make some decisions. Okay, are we just going to all of us deal on a level playing field? It's all about teamwork. And that's I think a critical piece of growing yourself as a professional.
Yeah. And I can see that too, Katherine. I can picture engagements I've had over the years with passionate people who are passionate about their nonprofit, passionate about their mission, passionate about, the programs they're in. And then when you get get a bunch of people who are passionate, you're going to see different philosophies, different perspectives, and each individual is going to try to raise their to a higher level, and thus that creates, a good environment of passion that's being fueled, and you got to figure out how to harness that.
The art of compromise, I think, become incredibly critical when dealing with teams of people that are also engaged. Because to your point, everybody, is passionate about something. They obviously think that they are correct about whatever the target objective is. So, you and Leslie and myself are working on a project together. I have one opinion, Leslie has a different opinion, you're somewhere in between. So, who wins out? And is it something more like, can we take elements of what you think is right and combine them with elements of what I think is right to come up with an even better net out?
Yeah. There's before we take, Les, I think you have a question. Before we take that question, the thought that came to mind is there's a guy that wrote a book, and there's a YouTube video out there called Where Great Ideas Come From. It was Steve, I think the guy's name is Steve Johnson, Where Great Ideas Come From. And part of the essence of that, which is a really cool video on YouTube, as well as a book, Where Great Ideas Come From, is the collision of multiple ideas. And so as a leader, we have to figure out a way to, get those ideas out and let them collide to create more value. So, Leslie, I think the question, was it from Dean? Talking about tech, applying for tech or business positions?
Oh, is that tech? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the question is, can the experience you gain from working in profit help you if you want to apply for technical or business positions? And I'm not sure if that was really for me or for Katherine, but I'll start and then Katherine can chime in. I would say absolutely. It's a really good way, if you want to change careers or move into something else, you can gain some experience outside of just within your job through working with nonprofits, maybe volunteering or doing a project or something like that. And it absolutely can be something that you put on your resume and LinkedIn profile.
Well, and I would add on to that by saying that getting involved in a nonprofit, in a community engagement opportunity, you might have an opportunity to become more of a leader within that nonprofit, working on a project as a volunteer than your current leadership position that you enjoy within a company is. And so when they see, oh gosh, this person has headed up a project with Habitat for Humanity, and they were the lead point person who got sponsorships, who recruited volunteers, who worked with the incoming family. But we've not given this particular person an opportunity to experience a leadership role, but they've got that leadership experience in the nonprofit world or with this nonprofit organization. That just shows you've proven yourself. you've got that stripe on your shoulder, so to speak.
Yeah. And I worked with a couple nonprofits to where we brought in volunteers, and one of the nonprofits we worked in, we needed a web presence. So we went and got, you know, a job seeker who had web development skills. He created the website for the nonprofit and did a fabulous job on it. And then we made sure all throughout that website, on every page, website developed by, I can't remember the guy's name, it was a few years ago. And so it became his portfolio that he told people, look, I created this website for this big nonprofit in Maryland. So it is a great way to go practice your skills, give back, and then use those experiences in your career. Absolutely.
As was said before, it's great for networking as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is Katherine, a thought came to my mind. For years, for those who know me, my primary business is LinkedIn, but I'm also a voluntary career coach. And as a voluntary career coach, and even as a LinkedIn consultant, I tell people on their profiles under the volunteer section, they need to talk about where did they give back? Where do they participate in their communities? And I say this statement, Katherine, this is what I'd like for you to expound on or tell me your opinion of this. And that is, I believe that good organizations want to hire good people who give back to their community. What do you think?
I agree 100%. For a couple of reasons. I think, and having been in a position where I have hired 2 employees recently, and not just because I'm a nonprofit that is immersed in community engagement, it's important to us to see that our employees or our candidates for employment are interested in being immersed in their community, because that means they're invested in their community, and they're a lot less likely to up and say, well, the grass is greener over in Greensboro, I think I'm going to change and relocate over there and find something else, or in Charlotte, which supposedly has a lot, but I completely disagree with. So it means that this person's going to stay here. This person's going to make a difference in their community. So they're invested in the community, therefore they'll be invested in this organization. And I also feel like when a company is looking for an employee who is engaged in other community aspects, it means that employee is not just one-dimensional. They're not just getting up, going to work, coming home, that they've got other resources that they have connected to. So for a nonprofit, specifically for Leadership Winston-Salem, when we deal with our volunteers, it's not just what our volunteer can bring to the table, but also what resources do you have in the community that might benefit you and therefore benefit us.
Yeah. Side note on that, I'll tell you, being involved in my community has been very rewarding for me to be able to help others. I have a granddaughter who was interested in a particular college and a particular school at that college, and she wanted a conversation with someone in that school in international affairs. And so I went to my network and I found someone that I had volunteered with in a previous environment years ago, and she's at that school. So I had the ability just to give her a call and create an opportunity for a conversation with one of my granddaughters. I mean, go figure, So.
And Teddy, we saw something like that happen recently as well. I had a Leadership Winston-Salem coach who has been with our organization since the 80s, and his grandson, so I think grandparents are doing much more than they used to when I was a kid. His grandson was graduating during COVID. So like the worst time ever to be looking for a job. And he reached out to me and said, have you heard anything about what's going on in this industry? Do you know anybody that's hiring? Do you know anybody that maybe we could just talk to? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, somebody who was on your team works in this industry. And so after being reminded, he reached out to them and said, is there any way there's a conversation that could happen between my grandson and you? You know me, so therefore you sort of by, transitive property know him. Now the grandson is working there. It's that connectivity makes a significant difference. I mean, it's the old adage, maybe not necessarily what you know, but who you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I add another flavor to that as well, Catherine. It's not just who you know, it's who knows you, trusts, respects, and likes you to enough to be able to help you.
Absolutely.
Leslie.
So in other words, get involved in your community, but really get involved. Don't just show up on the board, on the letterhead, and never make it to a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to share, I don't know if we want to allow Randy to add. You're probably enjoying that he can't talk, but let me read you his comment. So another benefit of community engagement is when a family moves to the area, the primary earner is busy with their work and the trailing spouse may not have a job staring at four walls. Getting that trailing spouse involved in the community helps them assimilate quicker. And, it's just a good idea for corporations and recruiters to actively help people plug into the community.
He is 100% correct. And if I might be so bold as to share a personal story. So a long time ago, when I had a 5th grader, a 2nd grader, and a 1st grader, my then husband said, I think we're going to move to Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia, so I can take a job up there in TV. Well, Bristol is this tiny little Appalachian community that I knew absolutely nothing about besides, it's Bristol, baby, and knowing that there was a NASCAR race up there, which I had zero interest in. So I walked through the first few months of being up there thinking, where in God's name did my husband move me? This is miserable. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any family. I was very much an outsider because it's a very small community. And finally, walking downtown, saw a painting in a window at an art gallery that says, bloom where you're planted. And I was like, I don't have any right to complain about this community if I'm not willing to do anything about it. So I got involved with an organization called Believe in Bristol, which is a Main Street community. And I first as a volunteer, then I did so much work as a volunteer. My executive director offered me a job. So I went to work for her to basically make Bristol a better place so that I could be happier, so that we could be there for longer without me waiting until the time came up for us to relocate, so that my kids could have a better life there, because I wanted them to feel good about the community that they were living in instead of just listening to mom complain about how much she hated it. So, community engagement is like, it's a very holistic, very trickle down effect kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get it. So, yeah. And also, by the way, there are real estate firms. A lot of the real estate firms will have a trailing spouse program where they will help the trailing spouse find these opportunities to be involved in the community. I know for a fact there's a couple real estate firms in town, and I know some people who are a part of that. I can't remember what they call it, the spouse immersion or, family immersion programs or whatever. And what they do is they look for opportunities to partner with, like Leadership Winston-Salem and other nonprofits in the area. So very well worth the investment of time to figure that out if you're going to relocate. So, so here's another thought. Community engagement. It's a big term in corporate America today. It's a really big term. Sometimes I think it's used a little more than it's real, but it is still a really important term. How do corporations benefit from their employees, being involved in community engagement?
So, if you think about some of our local companies, when you think about customer loyalty, consumer loyalty, are you more likely to patronize a for-profit industry and whatever they're selling if they sponsor your son's Little League team, if they give back to the local soup kitchen, if they have employees that are doing the hard volunteer work for Habitat for Humanity? Or are you more likely to patronize an organization, a company that you never hear doing anything in your community? To harken back to the Bristol community, so it was the Tri-Cities up there in Virginia and Tennessee. It was Bristol, Johnson City, and Kingsport. And the largest employer in Kingsport was Eastman, formerly Eastman Kodak. And Eastman sponsored everything, every baseball team, every Little League team, every soccer team, every community event, every nonprofit organization, because they wanted to feel invested in the community. They wanted their employees to understand that we are a part of your family. We are going to make good things happen in your community because you are important to us. So it builds goodwill within the employee base to know that your company is putting money back into the community, and it builds community goodwill towards that organization or company.
Yeah, I'll offer you that I take advantage of community engagement for my business as Teddy Burriss, not as my business, but the business takes advantage of Teddy Burriss being public and helping in his community. I can't pay for that advertisement. There's no way in the world. I mean, the more I show up, and I got to get back to showing up beyond through the screen. But what ladies, what I tell you earlier, beyond through the little white dot, because that's such a rich value for my company, for me to be involved. And Katherine, to your point, being involved, not just showing up on the board. It's rich. Mm-hmm. So, hey, this is your lunch conversations with Randy and Teddy. Randy is incognito today. He is not playing co-host. For some of you may have discovered, he is listening to us. He is threatening to fire me if I don't follow protocol on the show, because Leslie does not drop the hammer like he does. You can't see the chat that's going on between the panelists, but normally Randy would be slapping me silly because I'm not doing it right. I'm joking. But our special co-host is Leslie Speas from the Resource, and our special guest is Katherine Perry from Leadership Winston-Salem. The conversation today is all about community engagement and how that can help you in your profession as well as in your career transition. So good chat so far. I hear another thing came to mind. And I'm with you. Community engagement for the person and for the business is really rich. Talk a little bit about, Katherine, ideas about how do you expand your network? You get involved in a nonprofit. Do you just get involved and meet people, or do you go further than just meet people? What do you think?
Well, I think anybody can go to a networking event. When we had Venture Cafe in Winston-Salem before COVID, it was a great opportunity to go just meet people and talk to them about who you are. I know that formerly the Chamber, now Greater Winston-Salem Inc., has done a lot of 40 under 40 things prior to COVID. And those are great opportunities to network specifically. But when you become engaged in the community, and I would say through the avenue of engaging with a local nonprofit, it's not just, hey, glad handing and throwing out your business cards like Chinese stars. It's showing, and I guess, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but it's really showcasing what your skill set is and what you're capable of doing. Because when you work on a team with a team of other leaders or other people that find community engagement important, and they say, wow, you know what? Teddy is super reliable. Everything I have ever asked him to do, he does it, and he goes above and beyond and comes back with more. I wish we had somebody like Teddy that worked for my organization. Oh, wait, I have an opening. I think I might give Teddy a call. That happens all the time. We see it happen a lot within Leadership Winston-Salem, actually, because we have teams of people that work together on deliverables for nonprofits. And this team of 8 people becomes like a little family unit over the course of 9 months. And they say, okay, this person brings it in spades. Like, they do it, and they do it awesome every time. And I do have an opening in my organization or my company or on my nonprofit. And I would love to have that person connect with my organization and come on my board and then meet all these other wonderful people that I've amassed to help further the mission of my organization. And that it's like a domino effect. Yeah. So you meet one person, you show your worth, they introduce you to somebody else. That person says, wow, I've been looking for somebody just like you for how long?
Yeah. And I can, because I am a networking strategist. And by the way, that's when I started my business, I refer to myself as this networking strategist. And this stays in front of me because it reminds me that I'm all about networking, and networking is not all about Teddy. Networking is about helping other people, helping other nonprofits, helping in my community, helping organizations who need help. But just like when you're at a regular networking event, as Katherine referred to, you don't go to a networking event. And by the way, if anybody needs any, right here, I got a whole box or 2 of business cards I can dole out with reckless abandon, but that doesn't help me. what helps me is meeting real humans who care enough about the nonprofit or the organization that I'm a part of as well, and really getting into what in networking they call it a one-on-one conversation, really get into a human conversation and get to know a little bit about who Leslie is or who Katherine is and what makes them tick. And that's how you get value from networking. Show up where people with like-minded people, and then get into one-on-one conversations with them and get to know them. And the power of that is just phenomenal if you're willing to do
Teddy,
it.
I think good networking happens in places other than that are networking specific.
Yeah.
And so in other words, networking specific events are good and they have their place, but I think you have the ability to network anytime you have a group of other professionals, in the same room that you may not know. And for example, would be very recently, I think it was Monday of last week, Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine had a press conference to talk about the new regenerative medicine hub that they hope to create here to bring in lots of other businesses. And at that meeting were folks from Wake Forest Hospital, and it was Mark Owens from Greater Winston-Salem Inc., and it was Dr. Atala, and it was a gentleman from Wexford. And I mean, so lots of different people that were all interested in what was happening in the room. And so for me, it was an opportunity to meet folks I hadn't met yet who are interested in our community and seeing it grow and saying, you know what, I have an organization that might be interested in talking to you about some collaborations, and here's what I represent. And I've never met anybody from Wexford before, or we've never had anyone in the class from Wexford. This is what I do. Does this sound like something that you think you might be interested in? So it wasn't a networking event, but by God, with all those professional community leaders in the room, it was becoming a networking event.
Yeah. Leslie, I'm gonna get you to chat about what Lisa shared in a minute. And for me, Katherine, it's never miss an opportunity to truly meet someone that you bump into. That truly meet really means a deeper conversation that is outside the scope of why you bumped into each other. It's really powerful. Leslie, what's going on? I saw some comments from you and Lisa.
Well, Lisa just said that her networking nickname is the Uber Networker. She was termed that by a local career coach, and it's caught on in conversation circles. So she might be a good future guest that maybe could explain and give us some tips on that.
Yeah. She also referred to, what was the conversation about digging into social media pages?
Yes, she said that as she looks at companies to go to work for on their social media pages, she looks to see how they give back.
Yeah, and I'm with her on that.
A lot of people do that.
Because you can go to a company webpage and their about page, and all this glamorous stuff they put on their webpage, but dig in deep and see how real it is. And you go look at their Facebook, their Twitter, their LinkedIn, their company pages, and actually see if there is any true community engagement going on. It's one thing to say our company is all about community engagement. It's another thing to show it.
And community engagement from a corporate standpoint also is a bit of an indicator to their financial healthiness. So if a community is investing in their employees to go out into the community and engage, if they are themselves giving funds in the community to make a difference, that means they've got the funds to do that with.
Yeah.
Great point. Teddy, there was a question for you. Should we network with people who is not in our field?
So I'll give you my simple answer to that. Yes, because it's when you meet people who are different than you that helps you to discover ideas and philosophies you've never discovered. And I will tell you from personal experience, I spent 35 years in the IT industry. Today, Leslie and Katherine can both testify that I did not clearly know what to do when the batteries died in my keyboard. Because I am no longer in the IT industry. I'm now a public speaker, social media strategist, and YouTuber. And I would never have become what I am today if I had not started meeting people who are way different than me. Katherine, is that fair from your perspective?
Oh, 100%. I think it's only when you start networking with folks that are not exactly like you that you have the opportunity to grow. And it's not just networking, but it's also working with. So, not only from the from the thought of challenging your perspective, but challenge your growth opportunities, presenting you with other schools of thought, or even other avenues that you might be interested in pursuing that you may never have thought of before. I know that in the history of Leadership Winston-Salem, we've had many people that have started off with one profession, and after going through our program and experiencing different levels of community engagement, different perspectives from people in the class, they leave and change careers because they're like, I never thought that this would be something that I could be interested or passionate in, but gosh, I feel like I've been missing this my whole life. And they only got that from dealing with somebody else that wasn't exactly like them.
Yeah. So, I have another quote that I remind myself. If every day, if I wake up, I hang out with the same people over and over again, all I'm going to discover is the same stuff over and over again. If I want to find something new, I got to find new people. Yeah. So Dean asked about B Corps. Katherine, do you know, and he put it in the context that he asked about B Corps and social entrepreneur. I think those are two different things, but they're relevant. Can you speak to that, or is that?
I'm going to defer to you or to Leslie on that particular subject matter.
Well, I know just enough to be dangerous about a B Corp. One of the organizations I used to work for, I believe, was one. To my knowledge, it's not a nonprofit. I think an organization has to show, that they're involved in the community and, working on engaging their employees and things like that to be recognized with that honor, and that there is a application process for doing that.
Yeah, it's a style, or it's a concept of business, B Corps. I don't think it's anything that any of us at this point would be interested in, but I will tell you, social entrepreneur is a phrase that I've used before. And to me, a social entrepreneur is someone who cares about their community while they're also building their business. I think it's a highly aligned set of activities of being a community engager and while you're building your, this is my perspective on it, Dean. So, the other thing was in growing your network with nonprofits and being involved in your community. Katherine, is there a point where you're too much involved? Your engagement is way too high beyond the fact that your business might be suffering?
So I think it is entirely possible for people to spread themselves too thin. I think you need to know your limit. You need to understand where your threshold is, that you are actually acting as more of a detriment than you are a benefit to not only yourself, but to the organization. Because if you are running from nonprofit board meeting to nonprofit committee meeting to back to work and then to everything else, you're probably giving everybody a little bit, but no one entity enough to make a significant difference. It's just called spreading yourself too thin. So it is a hazard. And I think people genuinely mean well when they sign on to these opportunities. I don't think that people really, at least maybe it's just me being a little Pollyanna-ish, but it is my hope that when people volunteer to serve on a board, a commission, a committee, or an authority, it is because they have the best interest of that organization at heart, and they're planning on giving of themselves in a way that is appropriate and useful, not just so that they can pad a resume or like earlier, appear on the letterhead. And when you spread yourself super thin, that's what you come across as. I'm just doing this so I can say, look at all the different organizations I'm affiliated with. I don't really do anything for any of them, but I'm on everybody's website. So it's counterproductive.
Yeah. When I started my business in 2009, my wife and I were putting together this business. Remember, I worked for my wife. I've never seen a paycheck either. Is that something I should worry about? She says she's happy, so I just leave it alone. But when we started our business, we wanted to refer to it internally for the most part as a 50-50 business. And what that meant is for every hour I got paid, I gave away an hour. Now, you can't do that as you're growing your career. You can only do that, I believe, as you're tailing off your career into what most people call retirement, which is not a word for me to use. But anyway, when I was putting together this plan, I went and talked to a gentleman by the name of Gerald Crisco, who is my financial mentor. Gerald Crisco taught me the power of the dollar bill for business. And when I was telling Gerald about my business, he said, and I told him about the 50-50 plan, he used these words, Katherine. He said, I love the mission you're on, just don't become a mission.
Mhm.
He said, don't give away so much that you can't be successful for those that you give to and to yourself. And that was sort of along the lines of don't spread yourself too thin. And
Well, it's a little bit like the adage of you have to give yourself the oxygen on the crashing plane first before you can help the person next to you.
Yeah.
Until you can shore up your own house or your own job, you can't really give to another organization because you're giving less to your employer and not as much as you need to for the nonprofit.
Yeah. So absolutely. Leslie?
An important question. I had this question as well. How do you apply and get selected for leadership, Winston-Salem?
So we have a
those are two questions.
Well,
and I will answer
You can
both
address them
efficiently
both.
and effectively. So we have a recruitment period every year from February until June. We typically speaking ask our alumni to recommend people to us that they know in the community that are passionate, that are committed, that are engaged, that are interested. But we also put a lot of marketing out in the community through social media to say, if you want what we deem as your community MBA, if you are passionate, if you want to make a difference, if you want to engage and get to know other community leaders that are similar in passion to you, please come to an information session. We have 2 in February, 2 in March, 2 in April, or we do the March, April, May. And then that's our recruitment season. Applications are due by actually this past Friday. And then over the summer, we select our next class and we start them up in the fall. And their program runs from October to May. So I would say those people that are interested in Leadership Winston-Salem can reach out to me at kp@leadershipws.org. And I can put you on my touch point list so that I will reach out to you in the spring of next year to say, hey, remember, we met one another on the Lunch with Teddy and Randy show, and you expressed an interest in Leadership Winston-Salem. We've got an information session coming up. We'd love to have you join us.
Another
I just dropped that on the chat. So if anybody wants your email address specifically for that insight into next year's Leadership Winston-Salem program. Yeah. So, and by the way, John, reach out to me. I can refer you to Katherine because I know who you are. And even though I refer to you as my public heckler, you're good people. Cool. Good. Katherine, great conversations, and community engagement is important. It's important for lots of reasons, not only for us as business professionals who are trying to move our career to the next level or move ourselves into some other area of a career or just find an opportunity for a conversation about a job. But community engagement is also important for our community because if we don't show up and participate, in my opinion, we have no right to sit there and complain. What do you think?
I agree 100%. So our community, regardless of whether you're calling in from Greensboro or Advance or Winston-Salem or any of the points outside of our immediate network, every community has issues that need tackling. None of us live in a perfect utopian society. And to that end, there are people in our community that can't advocate for themselves, that need someone with passion to advocate for the betterment of that community. It makes your community a better place to attract new businesses. It makes your community a better place for improved school systems. It makes community better for your children, for you, for family that comes after you. There is nothing that I could point to that would be a detriment in community engagement. It makes your home a happier home. It makes your life a more rich and robust life. It is the best way to create engagement for you to advance your career and for you to advance your community.
Yeah. Leslie, I'm going to answer Dean's question about, do you need to be a high-level executive to be on a nonprofit board? And Dean, the answer is no. But what I encourage people to do is don't think about, I want to be on the board. Think about, I want to be involved in a nonprofit. I want to be involved in a community to help, to give back. And a part of that process may lead to higher level involvement, i.e. maybe a board seat involvement, but don't look at, I want to be on a board. look at, I want to be a part of the community. Katherine, did I say that right?
Yeah, and I mean, just in looking at the board of directors for Leadership Winston-Salem, we have a really diverse board insofar as skill sets and what they bring to the table. I mean, there are a few high-powered executives, but they are up and down that management ladder.
Yeah.
What we want are people that are passionate about what Leadership Winston-Salem does and what it can be and where we can go moving forward. We need a difference of opinion. I don't need 30 people that are rah, rah, we're perfect. There's nothing you need to do differently. I need people that are going to challenge the organization and say, can we do this better? Is there more that we can do for our community and for the citizens that live within it? So just speaking on behalf of Leadership Winston-Salem, I can tell you that it is important to have a diverse board, not all just top level executives, although there is a place for them. A good way to get involved, not just as a volunteer with a nonprofit organization, is look within your city and county boards, commissions, and authorities. They are always looking for people. I know that Forsyth County posts openings once a quarter, and they look for people in the community that represent a really broad cross-section of experiences to serve for the Animal Control Board, to serve for the Housing Authority, to serve for the Commission on Homelessness. They want to hear the community's buy-in. They want the community to be engaged so that they can make good decisions on behalf of the entire community. And that's a good point, or a good place to get started, is on those county and city boards, commissions, and authorities.
Yeah, cool. Leslie, any other thoughts from you?
I don't think so.
I'm going to have you, I'm going to have you tell a story.
Okay.
I'm going to have you tell a story. So you better be, just like when Randy and I do this, I go, Randy, you got a story? He goes, no, I'll make one up. Katherine, thank you very much. I really appreciate you showing up and sharing with us. And I hope that the audience got some insights in the value of community engagement for them in their career journey, as well as for their communities. Is there one or two points that are really impactful that you would like to make sure the audience heard?
Invest in your community. It is something you will never tire of the return on that investment. And if you are specifically passionate about Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, I want to hear from you. So reach out to me at the email address that Teddy put in the chat, and let's have coffee sometime. Yeah.
Yeah. And Randy, by the way, just chatted back, fantastic show. And I paraphrased the words. So, Leslie, I have a story. Do you have a story?
I have a story. Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a personal story about community involvement. So I was on the board with an organization called Winston-Salem Street School. Mm-hmm. It's an organization that helps at-risk kids and adults that probably would not finish high school elsewhere. It's a great organization. I got engaged. Actually, the most meaningful part of it was I got engaged with one of the students as a mentor. It's been about 3.5 years since we engaged, and she has graduated, and we've stayed in touch. And actually, she ended up getting married, and I helped her plan a no-budget wedding at my church. That is definitely not in my wheelhouse for anybody that knows me, but I had a lot of friends that helped out, and it was just a very meaningful experience. And I really have treasured my relationship with her, and would encourage anyone that has an interest in working with high school kids that need some additional attention to consider mentoring there or with other organizations.
Yeah. Winston-Salem Street School, who's the ED?
It is Mike Foster.
Mike Foster, that's right. Cool guy, really cool guy. So good stuff. So here's my story. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Do not be sitting on the couch. So that's not good English. Do not be that person who sits on the couch and wonders who's going to take care of that. Don't do that. Raise your hand. And oh Lord, it had to be 2000, maybe 2001. A buddy of mine came to me and said, hey man, I need help at the March of Dimes. And so I said, dude, count me in, man. Tell me what you want me to do. I had no idea what he wanted me to do was this much. And so I got involved in the March of Dimes and way back then. And it was a very simple task to begin with, but then anybody who knows what March of Dimes and Winston-Salem used to have what was referred to as March of Dimes chili cook-off and rubber duck regatta, okay? And one of the things that they did was they threw rubber ducks, I'm talking about thousands of rubber ducks, into the, what's the name of that river? The Yadkin River. And then the ducks all had a number on them, and you won if you bet on that number. And I'm like, I'm not chasing rubber ducks down a river. So the moment I used those words, I knew I had to find an alternative. I just couldn't tell the nonprofit what they were doing was crazy. So I went to find another alternative. And so I worked with some local graphics companies, local videographers, local cartoonists, and I helped produce a very, very expensive digital rubber duck regatta, and I got grants to pay for it. So don't sit on the sidelines or complain about what you see. Raise your hand and get involved. And by the way, that was by far the most rewarding involvement in my community I've ever had, because the people I met, the people I worked with, what I learned was just absolutely phenomenal. For about 5 years, I was involved in the March of Dimes, and it was really, really rewarding because I was willing to raise my hand. So, Katherine, thank you very much for showing up. See, I had another something else popped up I wanted to address. Oh no, somebody said, I hope Leslie comes back as a co-host again. Leslie, I hope you do come back as a co-host again.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
I do know for a fact that we have an opening in the week of the 12th. If you want to be around for that week. Of course, you're not going to get the pleasure of working with me that week.
Oh, I'd have to work with Randy.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about that.
But we pay well.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of
I told him earlier you were giving him a 50% raise, and he said, meh, you did that 6 months ago.
Yeah. So cool. Hey, it's 12:56. Katherine, we did great. I really appreciate the ideas. I hope our audience really got some value out of today's conversations and will consider community engagement as a part of their methods, their tactics to build their personal brands. Leslie, thank you very much for covering for Randy today. And we will see everybody again next week, where our special guest next week is, oh Lordy, Randy's going to shoot me because I don't have all my ducks in a row here. Our special guest next week is, oh, come on, here we go.
Sid Davis.
I think it's Sid Davis.
Oh my golly, it is Sid Davis. How do you two know that and I didn't?
Chat.
Hey, so look, our special guest next week is a comedian. Sid Davis will come to the show and he will talk about the power and maybe even demonstrate the power of humor during your job search. So you'll absolutely going to be another fantastic special guest. So join us every Wednesday at 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for lunch with Randy and Teddy. Share it with your friends, share it with anybody you think can get value from these conversations. And thank you, everybody, for attending. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.